Hi, it's the Mike Rogers Show. Mike Rogers here with you. And today, this is the most amazing interview that I've had so far. Legendary jazz star, the man who invented jazz, according to some people, Louis Armstrong's daughter, Sharon Preston-Folta, was born on June 24th, 1955 in Harlem, New York. Sharon is Louis Armstrong's only daughter. Together with his ex-partner, Lucille Preston, she was born. In December 2012, Sharon Preston-Folta put together claims that she was Louis Armstrong's daughter, which was later confirmed to be true. Here she is, incredible, Louis Armstrong's daughter. Won't you welcome Sharon Preston-Folta? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Yay, Sharon.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
Thank you, Mike, for having me.
No, thank you for being here. It's just amazing. I know Louis Armstrong is super famous in America, but I would venture to say he is just as, and maybe even more famous in Japan.
I would agree with you. In fact, I would say that he is more famous in Japan and overseas in general. I feel that's because there's a more of a love of all of jazz, fully traditional to the new avant-garde and everything in between. When you go to festivals in Europe, jazz festivals, they are anchored in all styles of jazz. So they have the respect for the music. It's here, but it's much deeper overseas. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of jazz stations around the world, and they're just playing jazz, and there's jazz stations that play new jazz, and there's jazz stations that play the traditional jazz, but they all play Louis Armstrong music.
Well, he spanned generations.
Yeah.
One of the few that really spanned generations. Someone was speaking to me about him playing with Ma Rainey. And I asked them to just take a moment and think about that, because he was playing with Ma Rainey, and yet he was still relevant and recording in the late 60s when he had his biggest hit, commercial hit, Hello Dolly, and then, of course, What a Wonderful World, which has grown in popularity years after his death.
Oh, so, yeah. Think about wait a minute. That. Do you know that even punk rock bands have covered What a Wonderful World?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I bet you're from New York, so I bet you know the Ramones.
Yes.
The Ramones covered What a Wonderful World.
I'm going to have to check that version out.
Oh, haven't heard that one. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
So anyway, can you introduce yourself and tell us, your basic introduction?
Absolutely. Born in Harlem, New York. My mother, Lucille Sweets Preston, was a dancer in Black vaudeville, and she and her husband and dance partner, Luther Slim Preston, had a great career in the 1940s as the dance team Slim and Sweets. Oh. And when touring in the 40s, especially touring in the segregated Jim Crow South, all Black performers, whether they were the opening act or the headliner, they all traveled together. They stayed in people's homes. They ate together out of necessity. And this is how they had to survive. And they all got to know each other. So Mom and Slim became very friendly with my father and his fourth and last wife, Lucille. And Slim and Sweet's dance team opened up for my father on numerous occasions. Wow. So they were a part, the shows would have many acts. They'd have the headliner, they'd have the dance team, comedian, maybe a solo singer, or maybe a solo dancer, but it would be billed on like 6 or 7 acts. And this is how shows were back in those days. So they knew each other and they socialized and were friendly. And so my mother's husband and partner passed away in 1950 from stomach cancer. And
that long ago.
That long ago, right. And my father came to the apartment for, the repast.
Yeah.
And as he was leaving, to pay his respects.
Right.
And as he was leaving, he said to my mother, "I'm supposed to take care of you." And she said, "Okay." And that was the start of their relationship, going from just a friendship to a romantic relationship. So from 1950 until he passed in 1971, they were a couple. They had a relationship. And my mother and my mother traveled with him throughout those early years. And then when I was born as a young toddler, we would go on vacation with him. We lived in Harlem, my mother and I, and he would send for us to be with him. And I, as a baby, would travel on tour with him, locally on the bus. I never, flew. But I would travel with him. So I traveled with the band and I got to see him perform, and I would be in the dressing room. And if according to the venue, some venues I couldn't go to, but most venues I could. So I grew up seeing him perform, being with him on the road, having him come to our home. And then he bought my mother and I a home when I was 7, and we lived in Mount Vernon. And he would come on occasion. So by the time I was 7, though, my parents had been in their relationship for 12 years. And for my mother, she believed that she was, that they were going to get married, that she'd be the next Mrs. Armstrong. And it was a promise that he had made to her, but he kept telling her, "No, this is not the time. Wait.
Yeah.
So by that time, things were starting to get a little bit of distance between them, and we did not travel with him as much. But from the time my mother and father got together until the time he passed, and even after that, he took care of us financially. He supported us on a monthly. He also was very lavish with gifts. And when he passed, he left money for my mother and I, which lasted while he passed when I was a sophomore in high school, and it lasted until my first year of college.
Oh,
yeah.
So actually, I've seen the movie. I've watched it like 3 times. And I've read lots of articles about you, and I ordered your book on Amazon, but it was supposed to come last night, but it didn't. But I couldn't have read it in this time anyway. But so when you were a little kid, when did it dawn on you, or when did you realize that, gee, my dad is really famous, or has it always been that way and you just never thought about it, or what?
No, I thought about it and I knew it. And it was something that I was able to share with my cousins, who, when I was really young, we lived very close together. But I was told that by my mother, it was something I could not share with the public for my safety. And no one ever asked questions because my mother was a widow. So, she was always known as Mrs. Preston, and I took her name. But my mother would tell me all the time, "Your father's a big man, and this is for our safety. We need to keep our lives private." And this was something that I lived with. And as I got older and asked more questions, my mother was insistent, "No, this is private. And those that know, and those that don't need to know." And that was her mantra. And she would say that. fast forward when I was 12 years old, as you know, it was the last vacation. We hadn't gone on vacation with him for a long time, and it was the last one. And by that time, their relationship was truly rocky. And they had such a huge argument that I witnessed. And, that was pretty much the end of their romantic relationship. And we were in Atlantic City, and we left Atlantic City, and it took Mom a year to answer his letters. But through all that time, he just never stopped taking care of us. And, one letter that I recall is him saying, are you ready to bury the hatchet? Like they just had a spat or something. And in hindsight, reading that letter, I had to laugh to myself, because I'm saying to myself, he's so cavalier about it. Like, oh, we just had a fight. I love you. But
typical guy, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at I'm looking at like, are you kidding me? It was well, especially from the eyes of a 12-year-old, it was horrifying to see them, so upset, angry with each other, and anything but loving. And also for me to see that they were so enraged with each other that even the fact that I was sitting there didn't stop them from having this argument. So for many years, that's stuck with me. And as I grew older, one thing I wanted to do was make my own, create my own life and make my own way outside of their legacy. So really, for many years, I pursued a career. And fortunately, for almost 40 years now, I've had a career in the business end of radio. It was really when I was 50, in my early 50s, and already a grandmother, that I just started to have those questions again about why we weren't more of involved in his public life. Why, when I read about him, I didn't see much of me, or when I saw anything about my mother and I, it was very early on. But after, 1955, 56, there was nothing written. So it was, at one time it was out there, then it was squished.
Oh, and
my mother lived to be 98. So she survived all this time. Yeah, she just passed away in 2020.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But she had a long life. And I still, as an adult, I kept saying, Mom, I want, it's time for me to talk about it. This is my life. And she was just so against it. And I just said, you know what? I have grandchildren now. And I don't want their legacy to be the secret. So I set out to, find out more information. And in doing that, I was directed by an estate attorney to read his will, because the attorney said, if you want to know more about a person, the will tell you. So I went to the will in the Queens County, and that's where I saw the affidavit where his wife had said that he had no children and had not adopted any children. And he did adopt his nephew or his cousin. Right. And it was really in that moment that I understood how I was, legally erased, and just erased, period.
But she just wrote it on there, and then I guess he signed it. Is that
he didn't sign it?
Oh, he didn't sign it. Is that legally binding, actually?
Well, it was signed. It was added to his will. So it wasn't signed by him. It was added to his will after his death, but it was signed by a judge.
Oh.
Yeah. So I can't even go down that road, how all of that happened. And so many things. My mother, the honest truth that I had to face was that my mother had the opportunity to do something and didn't.
I know lots of people like that.
Right.
Who have the chance to do something. I always do. I'm like you. And yeah, when you have the chance to do something, you've got to do something, because time is like your worst enemy, about in this sort of case.
Especially so and looking at, so once I saw that and I realized, what my mother had decided, to, walk away from, she felt that my father acknowledged me privately and that was good enough for her. But I said to her, you know what? No, that's not good enough for me. It's not good enough for my children.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to tell my story and let myself be known. So from that point, I went to, I was speaking with friends, and I was directed to an estate attorney, entertainment lawyer,
mm-hmm.
who connected me with a literary agent,
mm-hmm.
and also a co-author. And I, worked on my memoir, putting my story, together.
Mm-hmm.
And I took my father's letters that he had left my mother, who I
very
inherited.
Good evidence, my dear. Very good evidence in that one photo where the I don't even know what it's called, the plastic cover.
Oh, the family portrait.
Yeah, that's like, oh, this girl is telling the truth. That's what I just thought, like, well, you go ahead, continue your story.
So the process of doing, just like just sitting and saying, okay, these were my feelings, this was my life, these events happened, and so let me put it in some order, and then also have his words involved in, like it to in the timing as I'm telling a part of the story, have the letter that corresponded with that year, and what was going on. Mm-hmm. And I was able to integrate parts of his letters that spoke to mom and me, fair use, and put my memoir together. And when when the literary agent and I and co-author went to certain, publishers, we did not get a book deal. But I knew that, because I've been in sales and marketing for all my career.
Yeah.
I knew that the problem was that I was an unknown entity.
Right.
So I think they were cautious of putting me out there, and I wasn't known, but my father was very famous, so not to have it look tabloidish.
Mm-hmm.
But so I said, for me to be known, I have the letters, I'll put them up for auction. I didn't want to.
You auctioned the letters?
No. I put them up for auction.
I see.
With my goal of getting the publicity.
That's a smart move.
I put them up for auction.
You put them up
with a high benchmark, like the first bid had to be very high.
Yeah, right.
And I thankfully did not get any takers, but
you probably will after this movie comes.
Well, no, I've already donated them to the Library of Congress.
Oh, wow. That's so nice. Wait a minute. You could have gotten millions of dollars, I think.
Well, almost 200,000. That's what the value is. But it was never about the money.
Uh-huh.
And I felt that, what I did get was a press release that led to a newspaper article in the New Orleans Times-Picayune, the New York Times, the London Telegraph,
wow,
the Sydney Australian Herald, and people calling me for book events. And then I met the producer of LittleSatchmo, the documentary, who produced the local event, Aaliyah Umberger. We connected. She read my book and said, I think this would make a great documentary. I have a director in mind. And at that point, I realized, and I held on to the letters all that time, but I realized that for my legacy and for my mother and father and I as a family, the best place to have those letters was for the public view.
Ah, right.
And so the person that appraised them helped me connect with the Library of Congress. And they were they were very excited about the collection. And I made the collection, gave them the collection last year, and it's in the music division. And it's Sharon Preston-Folta's collection, Louis Armstrong memorabilia. And so you can see all of the letters in full, the photograph, family portrait, a couple of other photographs that have my mother, father, his wife, her husband in them. So it's in that collection in the Library of Congress.
So, but so you put it. Let me. This is like I'm very detail oriented. So you put them on. Put these letters up for auction. Did you put them up at Christie's in London or someplace like that?
I put them up at an auction house in LA, Profiles in History. And that's the auction house that had Debbie Reynolds' costume collection.
Yeah.
So it was, I felt the right auction house, and had a high opening bid. No one bid on the letters, and that was fine with me.
I'm telling you, nobody bid on those because the Japanese and the Chinese did not know about it. So I bought some. I'm getting old, so I kind of have a brain. I've got some. I have some Picasso sketches.
Yeah,
and they many years ago, they were put up at Christie's, and it was like the biggest collector in the world. They put up 140 pieces, and the auction house did not want to do that because they said the prices would go down. So I read that and I thought, oh, this is my chance. So I bid and I got the first two. And then after that, the prices just shot up like crazy. And I thought, whoa, I can't believe people do that. But that's amazing. So you sold you not sold, you gave the letters to the Letter of
Library of Congress.
Couple of photos, but you still have tons of things, right?
I don't have tons of things. No, I gave so I sent another batch of photos that my mother collected from performers in Black Vaudeville, 2 programs from the social club, the Copacetics, that her and Slim started in memory of Bill Robinson. The program had ads from different performers and everything in it. I have a photo, the photo where he wrote a small note to me. I still have that photo, along with the photo that he of the original All Stars and all of their signatures. And I kept one more item that he had given me. But other than that, I sent it, it's in the Library of Congress. The audio's in the Library of Congress.
That's
the
really
reel-to-reel
cool.
Audio. Yeah.
Does it cost money to get into the Library of Congress? They charge?
No, no, not at all.
I didn't know.
No, not at all. In fact, while we're speaking, I can send you the link where you can see the collection.
Okay. So but before we're getting really far ahead. So I want to ask you about like your childhood and where you lived in Harlem and what was it like at that time? And your father would come sometimes to visit you. What was that like?
Oh, it was definitely magical, when he would come to visit, because he would come to visit, and it was very special to mom and me. And when we were in Harlem, my cousins lived downstairs as well. So they would come up to see him, and to have, him. I mean, everybody was a fan.
Right.
So for me, I felt very special. My cousins were, happy to see him, and then they left and I got to stay. So, it was even more special for me. And then, then mom and dad had their time. So
yeah,
I really enjoyed that. It was just never enough, and if I have to reflect on what it was like being around him, I would say it always felt like company, like special company,
yeah,
like that guest that you pull out the china for, that kind of thing.
Right.
It had that essence, and I know my mother, being very protective, she created that, and his time and his schedule and his life situation didn't give us time to, have a normal father-daughter relationship. So, but, whatever I could gather from things that he did or said, I took in.
Can you give me like, I don't know, one special moment with your dad, I don't know, sitting on the sofa or watching TV or something that it really sticks in your mind?
One the special moment would be at a concert.
Oh.
I was 10, 11 years old. And he was playing at the Jones Beach Theater, which is not too far from Mount Vernon. And my uncle came and picked up my mother and I and brought us to the concert. And I was in the audience. He was playing with Guy Lombardo. And then after the show,
wow.
Yeah, it was just some kind of musical review they put together.
Yeah.
But the real event took place afterwards in a tent, like the after party kind of thing. And Hello Dolly was a big hit, and he was just having so much fun with the audience. And he did Hello Dolly at least like 7 reprieves.
Wow.
And it was how he went about it. I was, having as much fun as everybody else, really enjoying the show, enjoying him. And it was really the music. I was just so happy in that moment. And then afterwards, I thought we would all be together and spend time. We're walking to the parking lot. I knew he was going to get in a different car, but I thought he was coming home with us. I didn't know about his wife at this time.
Oh.
And we're on the parkway, and we go towards Westchester, and his car turns towards Long Island. And I was asking, like, where are they going? And my uncle says, I knew she would say that, and mom was like, no, he has somewhere else to go, and I would never get like a full answer. Like I was always treated like it's not my business, like it's not for me to know. Like children be seen and not heard kind of attitude. So I went, it was a joyous night, enjoying the music, enjoying him with everyone in the audience. And then, at the end, just confusion as to why he wasn't with us for the rest of the evening. So, situations like that.
Yeah. Your uncle, in that one couple of words, I knew she would say that. This is a very intelligent man, isn't he?
Yeah. Uncle Kenny was like a surrogate dad. He walked me down the aisle when I got married.
Oh.
Yeah, God rest his soul. He passed about maybe 6 years ago. But he was the one that I was able to, turn to and talk when I finally wanted to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking, years and years later, maybe in my late 40s and 50s is when I started talking about it. And when I said to him, I'm going to tell my story, everyone in the family, including him, like just stopped breathing for a moment. Like, this is, are you sure you want to put this out in the public? And I'm like, absolutely, because my mother was so, she was the matriarch and she was so strict. And it was like, this is our business and no one's to say anything. And the family, they followed her orders. I mean, and for years, my mother helped take care of the family as well.
Right.
My father supported us, and part of that, she helped support, her mother and sisters and brothers. And when she was on the road in show business, she supported her family because her mother was a single mother. Mm-hmm. So, they looked up to her as a parental figure. So my uncle was like, okay, because he was concerned at what response I would get. And I said, you know what, whatever it is, I'm telling my story. I have a right to, connect my heritage.
Wow, that's cool. So wait, so Sharon, I would like to continue this interview in part 2. Okay. Is that okay with you? Okay. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, the daughter, the only child of jazz legend Louis Armstrong today on the show. And we're going to be back here to talk to her tomorrow, right here on the Mike Rogers Show. Thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you. I want to talk about your book. I want to talk more about your book, and I want to talk about the movie. And I got to tell you some other really amazing stories. Okay.
Sounds good.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.